Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So in this video, I wanted to talk about when you can and cannot repair a windshield. This is a common question I always get asked, not only by you guys, but by my clients as well. When can when can I still repair my windshield? When is it too late to repair my windshield, and when do I have to replace it? So I wanted to give you guys a little bit better of an understanding of this so you can actually talk to customers and let them know when they can and can't repair their windshield. All right, so here's a really good infographic showing when you can and can't repair. So if we start off on the left, windscreen repair. Generally, most windscreen chips and cracks can be repaired, but it depends on 4 factors: size, depth, type, and location of the damage. Here's when you should choose windscreen repair. So when a chip is about 1 inch in diameter and the crack's about 3 inches long. So usually this is a really good rule of thumb, about 1 inch in diameter for the actual chip, and then the cracks that kind of come off of that about 3 inches or so. You can still repair them, anything bigger than that, or not anything bigger than that, but when it gets a little bit bigger than 3 inches, you still can repair, but you just got to take it a little bit different of a process to actually fill them in. So when you have a star break, bullseye, partial bullseye, pit, cracked chip, or a ding. So like we went over before, all those different types of chips that you can repair. Those are all very common chips, and those are all ones that you can actually repair. So any chip or crack that is beyond the driver's line of sight and not near the edge. So if we go over to the right here, windscreen replacement. When you should replace your windscreen. Damages that cannot be repaired and calls for windscreen replacement are long cracks on both layers of the glass. So as we talked about, windshield is 2 layers of glass. So if there are any cracks on the inner layer of the glass or on both layers of glass, then you have to replace the whole entire windshield. So cracks inside the windscreen. So like I said, on an interior layer of glass, if any breaks are in there, you can't really repair those. At that point, it's kind of a safety concern. So yeah, you don't want to repair those. So edge cracks and chips. So if we go here, edge cracks and chips, as you can see here, this crack goes all the way till the edge. You are not supposed to repair these. I have done it before. I know a lot of people that do repair them, but that will actually repair these. Although it is kind of a safety issue, so it all depends on the crack and how big it is and whatnot, and just the characteristics of it. But essentially, you're not really supposed to repair them if they reach the edge of the glass. Complex multiple cracks. So if we go down here, so I'm going to show you guys some examples of this, but essentially the chips that have a lot of cracks inside of there, or they're super damaged inside, when the rock hits, it just creates a lot of damage. For the most part, you can't really repair these just because you probably could fill in all of the cracks, but it's not going to look good. In most cases, you're not going to fill in all the cracks. So these super complex chips, it's really just not worth it. At that point, you should replace it. So cracks over 18 inches long. So as you can see here, here's a crack, goes, usually start from a chip and they kind of crack out. You can replace or repair them when they actually do start to spread and get bigger. But really anything over 18 inches or so, it's a good idea to actually replace the windshield. If it is 18 inches, it is a bigger crack, so you're going to be able to see the scar, but essentially you can repair it, but in most cases you're going to have to replace it if it does get anything bigger than 18 inches. So damages over driver's line of sight. So anything that's kind of like right directly in front of the driver where they're going to be looking through it all the time, you probably shouldn't repair it there. Again, I have repaired it just because the customer wanted me to. I always tell them, hey, this is probably not the best idea to repair it just because it is in the line of sight. You're going to be able to see it. It can kind of distort your vision a little bit depending on how big it is. If it's a bigger chip, I won't do it. If it's a small, tiny chip, then yes, because essentially you're not really going to notice it. It's not going to make much of a difference even if it is in the line of sight. But that's only for smaller chips. So if it is a bigger chip that you think that when you do repair it, it's going to kind of distort the vision through, definitely do not repair it. A good rule of thumb is just to not repair chips that are in directly the line of sight of the driver. If it's on the passenger side, it's totally fine, like this one over here. You're not really going to see it. The driver's not really going to see it, so it's okay. But directly in the line of sight of the driver, it's kind of iffy. So here's some examples of some chips that are just really, really bad that you probably shouldn't repair. So if we start over here on the left, this is actually a chip that I got from a customer. They reached out to me and said, hey, I want to get this repaired. I actually steered them away from repairing this, told them that they did need a replacement. Reason being is because it's such a bad chip. This is a fairly large chip. There's a big cavity in the center with a lot of damage. As you can see here, there's a lot of broken glass inside. And then all these cracks that kind of come out, kind of extend quite a bit. So I was gonna assume that even if I try to repair it, these cracks would kind of move a little bit as I'm like pressurizing or putting a pressure onto them, opening them up and whatnot. And then the main purpose why I didn't want to repair this one is because the big cavity in here, there's a lot of missing glass on here. You can't really see it from the inside, but on the outside, there is a lot of broken glass that's missing. So when I do drill it and kind of clean up the pit, it's going to get rid of a lot of that glass. The injector is not going to seal properly to actually fill this. So I did not want to repair this one. It was just going to turn out not that great. It's going to leave a big scar. Customer probably wouldn't have been happy with it, so I just told them that they should replace the whole entire windshield. And as you can see, there's actually two chips right next to each other. A bolt probably hit them, or maybe even a rock that kind of skipped and created two chips. There's a lot of damage in this one, so I just really wouldn't repair this one. But essentially, the main purpose is because there's probably a lot of missing glass right here. So if we move over to the right photo, this is actually a pressure ring. So usually how these happen is whatever hits the glass, whether it's a rock or some object, it's going to hit right in the center. As you can see, there's a little right above my cursor. There's a little tiny mark right here. It's probably where it actually landed and hit. This one in particular, though, it probably got hit with like gravel or something because there's chips right here and right here. This one I actually did repair. You can repair these pressure rings. It's just they're a little bit more difficult to repair. Definitely recommend doing regular chips and getting comfortable doing windshield repair before you start doing these. So it's kind of iffy, depending on how bad the damage is and how many cracks are in here. It just all kind of depends on that, whether you repair it or not. I did repair it. I basically just filled it in from here, and then I drilled into both the edges just to make sure I get all that resin through out there. But essentially, these ones, it's kind of iffy. You can repair them. Sometimes you can't repair them. Totally up to you. Definitely recommend being careful and being comfortable with windshield repair before you start doing these pressure rings. So here's another example. This one was actually a crack. It goes all the way pretty much past the center of the windshield. It started right over here on the black part, which is called the frit, and it actually created a chip, and then customer probably didn't notice until it started to spread and get bigger. So this in particular, you wouldn't want to repair this. If it were to come out to like a quarter of the windshield or so, where if it was, smaller than 18, 12 inches or so, you can fill in those cracks, but anything that's bigger than that, you don't really want to. At that point, it's more or less a safety concern, so I definitely wouldn't recommend doing that. And then especially with this, since it goes all the way almost past halfway across the windshield, you're just going to need a replacement for this. It's not worth repairing. I know some people that will try to repair it. It might turn out pretty good, but it's not going to be very structurally sound. It's kind of a safety concern when you have this much broken glass inside of there. So definitely don't recommend repairing something like this. At this point, you do got to replace the whole windshield. So here's another example. As you can see, there was a chip right here, and then it kind of extended a bunch of different ways. And that's the reason why you don't want to repair this one, is because there's so many different cracks that kind of come out. A lot of surface area you're going to have to fill on this one. If it was just the chip and there was one like line that kind of came out, or one crack that came out, then yeah, probably it's okay to do. But since there is so many, there's 4 different cracks that kind of come out, you're not going to want to have to replace this, or repair this one, I should say. This one's going to need a replacement. Filling this in, it might make it look better, but it's really not going to hold up very well. It's not going to be a sound repair. It's not going to be structurally sound. So definitely would steer away from repairing something like this. If you get a customer that has something similar to this, definitely let them know that replacement would be their best option. And I just wouldn't recommend repairing something this bad. So here's another or a few more examples of bad repairs. So all of these are actually repairs that somebody else did that I found on customers' cars. And again, you don't want to repair somebody else's failed repair. So if somebody tries to repair it already, then you're not going to be able to repair it basically. So as you can see here, it doesn't really look like it is repaired, but as you can see in the center, in the pit right here, you can see how it's kind of cloudy and flat. That means that somebody tried to get that resin to flow in there. They just didn't do a good job. They weren't able to get all that resin in the chip. They didn't take my course, so they don't really know how to do it. But yeah, essentially you don't want to actually repair these chips because you basically can't. You can't really get that resin to flow in there unless you take out all the resin that's already put in there. Same thing with this. You can kind of see it better. It's kind of a haze on the pit right here. It's not broken glass. There's not really a hole there. It's kind of flat and you kind of see the haze. That's the epoxy or the resin that's in there. Same thing with here. As you can see, this one actually has a really good circle, so they probably drilled it out and then tried to repair. But as you can see, there's not resin throughout the whole chip. So it's just a bad repair, and you don't want to repair somebody else's bad work. It's just setting yourself up for failure. Don't try it. I've tried it before. I've tried drilling out other people's resin and tried popping it open. It's just a lot more work than you need to take on, really. So it's really not worth it. Usually you're not going to get a pretty repair out of it either. It's not going to look very good even if you try and you can get some of that resin in there. It's just not going to look as good as it should, and it's not going to be a proper repair. It's not going to be able to fill in all the way. So definitely recommend just steering away from repairing somebody else's already repaired rock chips. So with that said, those are just a few examples of chips that you don't want to repair, or that you shouldn't repair, or that you can't repair. There's probably some more that you probably shouldn't, but a good rule of thumb is just to know that if there's a lot of damage in there, there's a lot of broken glass, a lot of cracks, something that's already repaired, longer cracks that kind of go across the windshield, those essentially you don't want to repair. But if it's a regular chip, for the most part, you can repair most of the chips. Even if they look, a little bit worse than others. Some chips aren't really that bad, and then some are pretty bad, but they're still savable. So essentially, with all those chips that I showed you, you don't really want to repair those. But if they look a little bit better than the ones I've showed you, then most likely you will be able to repair them. So with that said, that's all I got for you guys, and I will see you guys in the next one.